The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
All right, the SEC's motion for a temporary restraining order to freeze Binance US's assets has been declined for now. Joining us now to discuss is CoinDesk's Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor, Nick Day, who is also the editor of CoinDesk's State of Crypto newsletter. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
All right, you were in D.C. yesterday covering that hearing. What did the judge say about the agency's request?
Yeah, so this was a several-hour hearing. The judge asked a number of questions to the SEC, Binance US, and CZ's lawyers. Her main thing is she doesn't think a temporary restraining order is appropriate at this point. She's been urging the parties to negotiate some kind of stipulation or consent decree that she could sign off on instead. And that's basically where she left it yesterday. She ordered the parties to continue negotiating. She's expecting a status report by the end of the Thursday, so tomorrow, and we'll see where we're at then. But in her words, the parties are already pretty close. They've agreed on most of the issues. The one sticking point is the SEC wants to freeze Binance US's assets until it's had a chance to look at its business expenses and maybe some audited financials. Whereas Binance US says that they don't want to freeze funds for the purpose of business expenses at this time because it would, in the words of one of their lawyers, be a death penalty.
Let's talk about some of these allegations that the SEC made in the lawsuit. Did any of them come up in the hearing yesterday? We heard when the lawsuits dropped that they were being accused of commingling funds, operating as non-registered securities broker. Any of this come up?
So they sort of came up, but only in the context of the temporary restraining order itself. Obviously the underlying case was a pretty significant one. Probably the most interesting questions asked by a judge were pertaining to the whole, securities versus commodities versus, whatever, of crypto assets. So she asked the SEC multiple times, multiple SEC lawyers, to distinguish between a crypto asset and a crypto asset security. She asked the Binance lawyers, is BNB a security, and if not, is it a commodity? And it's one of those questions that lawyers were not really necessarily willing to answer. The SEC team mostly said that they didn't want to make an assessment on the crypto assets that they didn't call securities at the time, and the Binance lawyer said that BNB is a crypto asset when asked if it was a commodity. So the judge is kind of, dipping her toes into what is fundamentally like the basic question at the heart of all of this. So at the heart of the Binance suit, the Coinbase suit, the Bitrex suit, the Biaxi suit from before. And it'll be interesting to see if she decides to either try and find a definition for all this to create some kind of precedent or guidance that companies can take a look at, or how she approaches it going forward.
Lawrence, you're back.
I'm back. Yeah. You remember that squirrel that ate up the NASDAQ's wires a few years, well, maybe it was before your time, but it shut down the NASDAQ. I think that descendants ate up the wires here. So Binance, getting back to Binance US, I mean, they kind of had this whole thing like basically prepping people to, quietly exit. That's still underway?
So in court, at least, what the Binance US and Binance attorneys were saying is, they're not going to shut down. The only way they would is if Binance US's funds are completely frozen and it's unable to pay ordinary business expenses. So, salary, rent, licensing fees, things like that. At the same time, the Binance Global and the Binance US teams both said that, at least insofar as making sure that no one from Binance Global, including founder CZ or anyone else offshore, has access to Binance US's private keys, they said that they would work on that. So not really an exit so much as just saying that they'd be willing to go to at least that extent to what the SEC has requested.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Nick, lastly, what happens from here? What do we expect next?
So the next thing we're looking for is the report at the end of the day tomorrow. We'll see if the parties have made any progress in negotiating. The judge really urged them to, find some kind of common ground and compromise that they could agree to. If we do see that compromise, then there'll probably be a bit of time for discovery and all those other processes before we get to the next hearing. If not, then we'll see what the judge decides.
Nick, thank you very much for joining us this morning. That was CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor Nick Day. Don't forget to sign up for the State of Crypto newsletter on CoinDesk.com.